Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the shift. I'm so excited to have you here today. And if you are here listening right now, chances are you're a high achieving woman that checks all the success boxes, but you still have overwhelmed and you will find yourself missing out on opportunities because you can't make a decision. You're less productive, you're arguing with your loved ones, or your health is being affected. Hello, I'm Stacey Johnson, and I'm a women empowerment coach and a resilience mentor. And I help women who are overwhelmed. Maybe they've experienced a life altering event that has brought on even more stress and overwhelmed. And I help them regulate their emotions, regulate their nervous system, overcome overthinking so they can make confident decisions, be more productive, and connected to their loved ones. So I am glad that you are here today. And today's training is going to be about how do we overcome overthinking. And I'm not a stranger to overthinking. I have been there myself. In fact, about 10 or 15 years ago, I overthought so much. I was a running around all the time with my kids. They were in a lot of activities. I worked in a very stressful position in an alternative school. And there were times that when I came home from work, my overthinking was so bad that I would walk up the stairs and couldn't remember why I walked up there. Now, I was only in my early 40s, but I was starting to think that I had the signs of early dementia. We had dementia in my family, so I was really starting to worry that there was something wrong with me. But then I have, now I've overcome my overthinking and I don't allow it to get in the way. And there are no signs of memory loss. So the dementia thought is not something that comes across my mind anymore. So do have you ever felt stuck in your own thoughts, unable to shut your brain off, feel like your brain is constantly in overdrive, just spinning? Give me a yes in the chat if this sounds like you. While you do that, I'm going to get a sip of my water real quick. So let's talk about today's training. Today, I'm going to talk about what is overthinking, how it affects your mind and body, and I'm going to provide you a technique to help you release that overthinking thoughts. So, what is overthinking? And why do women suffer more with it? I bet you didn't realize that women suffer more, and we do. Overthinking is repetitive, excessive thinking that leads to stress, anxiety, and decision paralysis. Did you know that we have about 60,000 or more thoughts a day? Who would have thought, right? I didn't realize I had that many thoughts. But if we're an overthinker, some of these thoughts get stuck in this vicious loop and we just can't get them to stop. We may even replay our conversations. We worry about the worst case scenarios. We struggle to make decisions, and this just leads to mental exhaustion. And even though we're mentally exhausted, we can't stop overthinking. Overthinking is our typical thought process on steroids, is what I say. And did you know that women overthink more than men? Let me know if you thought this was true. I didn't realize this until I, went to a training not too long ago in for my because I'm a therapist as well, and I had to renew my license, and they gave us that fact. Women are naturally wired differently for empathy and connection, thanks to a stronger corpus callosum. Men are always telling us that they're stronger than us, and it's always a known fact that men are stronger than women in most physical abilities, but not this one. We have a stronger corpus callosum. What is that? Well, it connects the two hemispheres of our brain. And this just means that we process emotions and experiences more deeply. And we have a higher level of estrogen, which is what we all know, and which makes us more attuned to relationships. Now, I'm not really all into the science stuff of the brain. I've been a therapist for over 25 years, and I'm more into teaching techniques and providing support and guidance to help get out of this overthinking loop. I have a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in counseling. So I have really always focused on helping get rid of the cycle, not necessarily the science behind it all. But it is important for us to understand the why. As women tend to, we tend to overanalyze interactions and decisions more. We're also raised as caretakers. That's been our role since, the beginning of time. Even if we think back to, hunting and gathering times, we women were the caretakers. They were the ones that made sure that meals were cooked and the, places were that the home was a safe place for when the hunters came back. So we've always been caretakers. And that makes us more hyper aware of the actions and that affect others. Plus, women tend to be what I call the CEO of the household. Put in the chat if you consider yourself a CEO of your household. This is where we juggle all the multiple roles and the constant responsibility of everybody that lives with us lands kind of on our shoulders. And we're constantly in problem solving mode. I know that was, my role was definitely the CEO. I managed everybody's schedule. You know, if there was a doctor's appointment, I knew about it. If there was kids were in two different baseball teams on two different sides of the town, I was the one that arranged to make sure that transportation was all figured out. That always ended up being my role. And social pressures tend to increase people pleasing thoughts. Overthinking could include our internal messages or cognitive distortions, or some people call them faulty beliefs. And this is when we believe things like, I'm not good enough, I have to be perfect, I'm not worthy, all these kind of internal messages. Sometimes we may not even realize that those internal messages are there. They come up in sometimes in our actions. I was working with a client for a while, and she had this belief that I wasn't good at, she believed I wasn't good enough, but she didn't realize when she first started working with me that that's what was kind of increasing her anxiety and her stress, because everything that she did kind of resulted around this belief. Her decision making was related to this thought that I wasn't good enough. So that was constantly playing in the subconscious part of her, and that she didn't even realize. Again, overthinking can include future worries. So like the what ifs, like if there's a heavy storm, a lot of wind, what if a tree lands on my house? Or it can be about past mistakes or conversations. So maybe you had a disagreement with your husband before you left for work, and then you think about that conversation all day long. You kind of replay that whole conversation, and then you start even worrying about what if he's so mad when I get home from work. Or there's guilt about something that already happened in the past and that you can't change it. And again, our internal messages. So in the chat, where do you find yourself stuck at? All right, thanks for sharing. Overthinking seems so unstoppable. Why do we feel like that sometimes we just can't stop it from doing that? Like saying to ourselves, just stop, or I'm not going to think. Those kind of things don't really work. So We have to figure out why. And our brains are wired to problem solve. It's the job of the brain to detect the problem and find a solution. And so when our brain perceives uncertainty, it increases fear. And the brain will keep running scenarios trying to figure it out. And there's no clear answer. Sometimes there is no clear answer. And then that loop continues. And when we get stressed with no answer, it triggers the amygdala, which is the fear center of our brain. And it signals something's wrong and it keeps you hyper focused. Leave in the chat if you ever felt that you got hyper focused on finding an answer to a problem. And when there is a potential risk, so if we are perceiving that there is a potential risk because we can't solve this problem and the uncertainty is increasing that stress and there's a potential risk, we perceive there's a potential risk because of the way we're thinking about things, then our nervous system gets stuck in the fight or flight mode. And overthinking tricks your brain and makes you believe if you analyze it enough, you will avoid mistakes, failures, or pain. The theory is more about, this is what this theory is the more we think about something, the more it becomes our reality. And I want you to remember that sentence. The more we think about something, the more it becomes our reality. So I want you to remember that thought. Now I'm going to give you a little demonstration with that theory. So imagine that, and I don't know, maybe you've played this game before. I call it the cloud game. I used to play it with my kids, or when I was younger I worked in a daycare and I played it with them. But you sit in a field with you're sitting on the porch, or you're sitting in the field, or and it's a cloudy day, but not that gray cloudy day. It is a sunny day. And the clouds are those white, fluffy ones, those pretty white, fluffy ones. And you ask everybody that's there, what do you see? And no one says anything for a minute. And then someone says, oh, I see a dog. Now everybody sees the dog, because now your brain has focused on seeing that dog. So again, the more we think about something, the more it becomes our reality. The more your brain will try to find that solution. It's kind of like a computer and the algorithm. The more you think about it, those neurons, those chemicals all focus on that one thing that you are doing. So give me a yes if you've ever witnessed this kind of theory about if you think about it long enough, it becomes your reality. Again, thank you for sharing. I appreciate everybody's feedbacks in the chat. I liked engagement, and this is one way that we can engage, is by having you participate in the chat. So I thank you for that. Overthinking doesn't mean you are being more careful. It doesn't mean you care more about the outcome. It doesn't mean you are more intelligent. It means that you're stuck on overdrive and looping on the same thoughts because it feels unsafe to let go. What problems do we face when we overthink? Overthinking isn't just a mental habit. It affects every part of our life, from health and productivity to relationships and emotional well-being. Mental and emotional exhaustion happens when we overthink. And this is when we feel mentally drained. We struggle to focus because your brain is on overload with thoughts. It increases the anxiety, self-doubt, and second guessing every decision. We can experience sleep issues because we may lie awake at night, replaying the past conversations of the day, worrying about the future. Or sometimes we may wake up in the middle of the night by something, and then we can't fall back to sleep because, again, we're lying awake, replaying these thoughts. And then we wake up exhausted, even after sleeping, because the brain truly never shut off. You may have say every morning, you may go get up and be like, I slept 8 hours. I went to bed and I slept 8 hours. Why am I so exhausted? That's because your brain is on overdrive and it never really rested. You may feel tired during the day and wired at night because, again, your brain now has been trained that when we rest, it's going to wake up and do all of our things. And then we can have physical symptoms like increased headaches, muscle tension, jaw clenching, stomach issues, higher blood pressure, heart rate, and a weakened immune system. When we are overthinking, and again, we dysregulate our nervous system, so we're more stressed, the increased stress levels decreases our immune system. So we're more susceptible to every little germ that's out there. And then we also have that decision paralysis and productivity struggles because it takes forever to make a decision, even small ones like what to eat or where. I know that ended up being an argument with my husband and I, is because he'd be like, where do you want to go to eat tonight? And I'd be like, I don't care. And he's like, you never can make a decision. Well, I could never make a decision because I was constantly on overdrive with everything else. I was in a very stressful position at work. Like I was in an alternative school, and I was just either in crisis all day long and always thinking when I got home of what I could have done differently, or I was thinking about all the things that I had to do because I was that CEO manager of the household. We even overanalyze options, fearing that we're going to make the wrong choice. That people pleasing, and we're going to talk more about that tomorrow and the next day in regards to self-care and self-love. Those are the other two trainings that I'm going to be doing. But this people pleasing can get in the way of making the wrong choice too. We constantly procrastinate, getting stuck in planning and never taking action. And then there's those relationship struggles because we may replay conversations and we worry about what others think. We avoid social situations or deep connections due to the fear of judgment. And again, like I would get in an argument with my husband because I couldn't make a decision. So you have maybe more arguments because of this overthinking. And then we may even misinterpret other people's words, or we overanalyze their text messages. And we have self-doubt and perfection. We feel like nothing we do is ever good enough. We fear that we're going to fail, or we have criticism leading to avoiding risks or new opportunities. We seek constant validation from others instead of trusting our own judgment. We forget how to use our intuition. And part of learning how to overcome overthinking is learning to trust our intuition. And I'm not going to be able to go into trusting our intuition today because of the timing, but that is inside my Anchor Resilience program. Also, with overthinking, we have missed opportunities because we say no, maybe to new experiences because of the what if fears. And we let overthinking steal time, our energy, and the joy from the present. I told you how I would go up the stairs and would forget what I came up the stairs for. So that stole my time because I would maybe have to retrace my steps, or maybe I would go back downstairs and start the project or start doing dinner and then realize, oh yeah, I went upstairs to get this. or maybe start a load of laundry. So again, it stole my time. So put in the chat which area of life or what problem do you see overthinking showing up for you? Like where does either overthinking or what problem do you face because of overthinking? All right. Thank you again for sharing. I really appreciate that. So now that we've gone over what is overthinking, what problems it causes, how do we stop it? And I'm going to teach you one of the techniques right now. And this is a mindfulness visualization. And it's going to help us release some of the thoughts that we're having. Now, with mindfulness, we get in the present moment. And when we are more present, and I know a lot of people have been talking about mindfulness, and it seems like, everybody's like, the new fad but mindfulness really does work because when we get more in that present moment, and I'm going to do a mindfulness visualization with you, and we're going to be more present with our senses, allowing us to get in that current moment has your brain focusing on just right now. And it has a harder time when we are focused on more of the right now of focusing on those what ifs or all those future things that we might be worried about. So this is what, with the worries of what ifs, or like I said, the should haves, that I messed that up. Sorry. So we're going to go do a mindfulness technique. And there are other techniques. Again, like I told you, I'm a counselor, so I'm trained in a lot of ways to release overthinking. And so taming the tides, I have a technique called brain breeze, and we rewire the mind for resilience. And all of those are inside my Anchor resilience program because I can't go over all those today. So I picked one is easy to teach in just this kind of setting. And it also doesn't involve a lot of other, like all the other techniques are, pretty impact and pretty, you know, sometimes very technical and sometimes takes us a little bit more time to teach those and have people learn those. So that's why it's inside my program. So for this visualization, this mindfulness visualization, I want you to be comfortable. I want you to take a deep breath. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. And then I want you to visualize like we are going to get ready to walk into the woods. And as we're walking, it is a warm day, but not too hot. You can feel the sun on your neck and on your face. There's a slight breeze, so you can feel that breeze again along your face. Maybe it moves your hair a little bit. You can hear the crackling of the leaves and the twigs and underneath your feet as you walk through the woods. You can hear the birds chirping in the distance. You hear some other rustling around in the distance, so it might be some kind of critter. And you just keep walking, you hearing all the things. You can smell that, that distinct kind of smell that the woods bring. And then you're approaching a river, and you can hear the river. It's not a very deep river. It's just maybe like a stream, creek. It's going to be deep enough where you want to cool off and wade a little bit. So you're going to go into this body of water. Again, it's not too deep. Probably goes to about mid-calf. And you can feel the water with that current touching your leg and keep going. So it's going downstream and you can feel that. And as that creek moves, I want you to visualize that as the stream is touching your leg, those are your thoughts. Those are your thoughts that you've been thinking about. The worries, that past conversation that you had earlier in the day, you're going to let them float on by. You're not going to judge them. You're not going to stop them. You're just going to let them keep flowing by. Decide that it's time to come out of the creek, and you're going to continue your walk out of the woods. And as you exit the woods, you're going to take a deep breath, and you can open your eyes. Now, how did you feel? Let me know in the chat. Did you feel that your thoughts were being released? Did it relax you a little bit? That's just, like I said, one of the techniques that I teach. The other ones go into a lot more detail. I actually provide worksheets to be able to start analyzing these thoughts and changing the thought patterns, challenging them, and looking at these belief system that you have and getting back in tone to your intuition. So if that is interesting you, those are all inside my Anchor Resilience coaching program. And remember, I'm going to be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to talk about self-care tomorrow. And we're going to talk about how overthinking impacts our self-care. And I will help you or give you a technique that you can start using every day. And like I told you in my intro message in the Shift Collective Facebook group, I'm going to give you techniques that don't cost you a dime. All right, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your trainings today during the shift, and I'll talk to you later.